Greetings travelers and welcome to another Tempo Storm Wild Meta video. The Year of the Dragon is coming to a close, and with the new year, the sets from the Year of the Raven will be retired to the Wild format. With rotation on the horizon, Blizzard developer Dean Ixar Ayala hinted that Team 5 is considering buffing Year of the Raven cards that were nerfed during their time in Standard by restoring them to their original form. We haven't seen a serious wave of buffs since the Rise of the Mech event last year, and a few of those buffs may have been taken too far. How safe is it for Team 5 to buff those cards? Let's take a closer look at the impact that buffing those cards would have to the Wild format. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to our channel and to ring the bell in order to keep up to date with our Hearthstone content. First up, let's take a look at Reckless Experimenter. Originally, Experimenter's effect could potentially reduce a Death Rattle minion's cost to 0, but when Snip Snap was introduced in the Rise of the Mech event, the community found an infinite combo with Snip Snap and Reckless Experimenter, where you could use the Experimenter to reduce Snip Snap's cost to 0 and continuously attach it to a mech to create an infinite buff and possible OTK. Team 5 quickly nerfed Experimenter to keep the combo out of Standard, but the Snip Snap combo was still possible with Mech Warper and Summoning Portal, and Snip Snap Warlock eventually became the best deck in Wild. The combo was nerfed with a change to the Echo mechanic, making it so that Echo cards can't have their costs reduced below 1. Now that the Snip Snap combo is gone, is there any harm in reverting Reckless Experimenter? Before the change, Experimenter was used with minion-generating death rattles like Devilsaur Egg to build threatening boards quickly, or with Voodoo Doll to destroy minions for 0 mana, but this approach was never that popular. Even if Reckless Experimenter were unnerfed, it's unlikely that a Death Rattle Priest built around it would be powerful enough to compete with the top combo decks of the meta. The verdict? Safe to unnerf. Back when Dr. Boom Mad Genius was at his original cost of 7 mana, Warrior dominated the Standard format. Once Dr. Boom's Rush Granting Battlecry and Big Red Button were online, it was almost impossible for most decks to challenge Garrosh going into the late game. With Dr. Boom nerfed from 7 mana to 9 mana, he became a much more awkward play since you no longer use Boom's hero power or play other cards on the same turn that you play Boom himself. With such a steep increase in cost, Dr. Boom faded from relevance in Standard, and Warrior eventually moved on to other strategies. Once Dr. Boom Mad Genius leaves Standard, will it be safe to restore him to his original cost? Compared to the Stranglehold he had in Standard, Dr. Boom's power was relatively tame in Wild. Even so, Dr. Boom was a staple card for Odd Warrior in its prime, and Odd Warrior was a fairly common sight on ladder until the dominance of Snip Snap Warlock in the Saviors of Uldum meta. In the Descent of Dragons meta, Odd Warrior is still in rough shape since it matches up poorly with top-tier combo decks like Reno Quest Mage and Cube Warlock. Even with Dr. Boom Mad Genius at 7 mana, it's unlikely that will be enough for Control Warrior to dominate Wild. The verdict? Safe to unnerf. The 5 mana version of Giggling Inventor was considered one of the strongest cards in Hearthstone's history since it was in virtually every deck in Standard in its prime. Giggling Inventor gums up the board in a way that's reminiscent of Spreading Plague, but since it's a neutral card, any class can use it. Its universal abuse prompted Team 5 to nerf it to 7 mana for the sake of the health of Standard. That being said, back when Giggling Inventor was still at 5 mana, it wasn't nearly as relevant in the Wild format. At the time, Wild was deep in the throes of Druid dominance thanks to the Star Aligner combo deck, made possible by the synergies between Aviana, Kun the Forgotten King, and Juicy Psychomelon. Even though Aviana's been nerfed, there's a new generation of combo decks that make Giggling Inventor's anti-aggro prowess largely irrelevant. If the meta shifts and aggro rises back to prominence, a 5 mana Giggling Inventor may become a staple defensive card for late game decks, but even then it's unlikely to see universal play in Wild like it did in Standard. The verdict? Safe to unnerf. The Extra Arms nerf is interesting because it was a card that was among those buffed as a part of the Rise of the Mech event, moving from 3 mana to 2 mana. With that change, it went from very rarely seeing play in Standard to being a linchpin card for Priest. With the release of Psychopomp and High Priest Amit in Saviors of Uldum, Priest went from being an underrated class to being one of the most powerful, prompting Team 5 to reverse the buff and bring Priest down a peg. How relevant would a 2 mana Extra Arms be in Wild? Extra Arms was a popular inclusion in decks like Combo Priest and Dragon Priest during its brief time at 2 mana, since it works well with cards like Radiant Elemental and Shadow Visions, so we certainly know it's playable, but even with that buff, those decks would still struggle against Warlock's premium removal, which makes its place in the meta quite uncertain. Most likely, Extra Arms buff would give Priest more variety in Wild without breaking the format. The verdict? Safe to unnerf. Luna's Pocket Galaxy is another card that was buffed in the Rise of the Mech event, event, only for that buff to be reversed in the same nerf wave as extra arms. Pocket Galaxy at 5 mana had a massive impact on the strength of Mage in Standard, with decks like Highlander Mage building around the card's ability to turn expensive minions into early game bombs. How much of an impact would Luna's Pocket Galaxy have at 5 mana in Wild? Pocket Galaxy would be a boon to big Mage decks across the board, especially Reno Quest Mage, which is already considered one of the best decks in the format. An early Pocket Galaxy followed by Arcane Intellect or Book of Specters to draw 1 mana Dragon Queen Alexstrasza or 1 mana Bran Bronzebeard into 1 mana Kazakis is a back-breaking set of plays for a deck that already has an abundance of powerful options. Mage certainly doesn't need a buff in the Descent of Dragons meta, so we'd recommend leaving Pocket Galaxy's mana cost right where it's at. The verdict? Unsafe. Raiding Party at 3 mana was a powerful boon for Rogue in both formats, so it's a particularly interesting card to consider buffing at rotation. It was certainly strong in Standard, but in Wild, Raiding Party made Kingsbane Rogue one of the best decks in the format. Preparation into Raiding Party was a common play that ensured that Kingsbane Rogue would find its namesake card reliably, as well as draw enough pirates to overwhelm the opponent in the early turns. After the nerfs to both Preparation and Raiding Party, Kingsbane ended up dropping out of the Wild meta almost entirely. So how would Kingsbane Rogue fare now with Raiding Party reverted back to 3? It's hard to say for certain. On one hand, Kingsbane's relentless go-for-the-throat approach could be a welcome force in the meta, since it could threaten the format's top-tier combo decks before they gain a foothold. On the other hand, Preparation is still nerfed, and without the ability to cast Raiding Party for 0 mana, Kingsbane might not be fast enough to compete. Even if it is, Kingsbane was a controversial deck during its time in the top tiers, so the community might not embrace the deck's return. The verdict? Borderline. Last but not least, we have Lesser Emerald Spellstone. 5 mana Spellstone was a staple card for Hunter during Deathstalker Rexar's dominance in Standard, taking both Secret Hunter and Spell Hunter to the next level in the format. In Wild, Lesser Emerald Spellstone was a common sight in a different version of Spell Hunter that played Barnes and Yshiraj Rage Unbound as its only minions, and it was reasonably competitive until after Spellstone was nerfed. As it stands right now, Rexar has a variety of decks that are teetering on the edge of viability, like Reno Hunter and Death Rattle Hunter, but will a 5 mana Spellstone be enough to bring those decks to relevance? Hunter has a lot of promising synergies with cards like Cloaked Huntress, Face Stalker, and Subject 9 that make Secret Hunter look good on paper, but even a 4-wolf Spellstone on turn 5 is probably not fast enough against Wild's abundance of removal. As for Spell Hunter, with Barnes nerfed to 5 mana himself, even having the Barnes into Yshiraj combo on 5 seems underwhelming against Plague of Flames and Ray of Frost, much less a 5 mana Spellstone. Unfortunately for Rexar fans, a cheaper Spellstone doesn't solve the issues that keep mid-range Hunter strategies out of the top tiers. The verdict? Safe to unnerf. With the Year of the Raven on its way out of Standard, its nerfed cards have a chance to be restored to their former glory. For most of them, buffing these cards is a safe proposition that can bring a wider variety of decks to Wild without breaking the format. Are there any cards from Hearthstone's history that would be fun to bring back in their original form? Let us know in the comments which cards you're looking forward to seeing buffed. As always, be sure to subscribe to the Tempo Storm Hearthstone YouTube channel and to turn notifications on to make sure that you are staying up to date with our Wild Hearthstone content. Thanks for watching.